Mandy.
Mandy?
He didn't go far.
Okay.
No.
He didn't go far. Okay. And if anybody else shows up, give them that. One here. We share it. If you need to. Oh, there's a whole bunch more over here. So Neil, what was last week's exercise?
Well, there were a number of exercises.
The homework exercise to do throughout the week to practice.
To tune in to the higher positive forces and to focus on the Torah scroll and the tree of life, and to try to control our animal soul.
Right. Last week we did a 1 minute Beinoni experiment. The 1 minute Beinoni experiment was to control our thought, speech, and action for 1 minute. Because all of us know we're not perfect. But at the same time, we learned last week that perfection as far as our thought, speech, and action goes is something that's completely within our grasp. It's not a new talent that we have to learn. It's not a new skill that we have to gain. It's something we intrinsically have by the very definition of being a human. It's called impulse control. And you have it. You exercise it millions of times throughout the week. What happens when you try to be a Beinoni for a minute? How did that experiment go when we thought for a minute? Were you able to do it?
I was able to do it for more than
For more than a minute. Did you try to do it all week long?
I did. And,
Yeah?
it didn't work.
And it didn't work. Well, anybody else? Deborah, you did it? Did it work? You were Beinoni all week?
Oh, yeah, no.
No? What happened?
I have 10 kids and a bad temper.
What happened?
That's all
Well,
right.
why couldn't you do it?
Well, I was
If you could do it for a minute.
I don't have 10 kids.
What about you, Justin? You're able to keep it up the whole week?
Got 3 plus the temper.
not the whole week, but
Look at
the
the mom.
past couple days, 2-3 days.
Yeah? You're able to do it for a whole day?
For like 3 days.
For 3 days straight?
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. And how did you feel after those 3 days? Good.
How'd you feel after the fourth?
And then when it stopped, or when you weren't able to keep it up, why was that? What happened?
Just like,
You're able to keep it up. And were there times when that was very difficult?
yeah,
Most of the time. So is being a Beinoni meant to feel that awful? I mean, yes, we could do it. And the truth is, there's no excuses to not do it. Like, I lost control. That's a myth. There's no such thing as losing control. You choose to give up control. Now, after holding on and white knuckling for a week, you may choose to say, this is too difficult, and I'm going to let go. I can't hang on to it any longer. Because ultimately, although we learned that having that impulse control is within our capability, to just work on our outsides to make sure that our thoughts, speech, and actions are always in line with what we are ideally supposed to be doing, and not working on our insides, it's completely untenable. You'll be miserable. If you ever come across a rabbi who tells you the only thing you got to do is just read the Shulchan Aruch and do everything that it says, and that's it. That's all you got to do. Read the Code of Jewish Law and follow all of its precepts. There's nothing else. He's basically setting you up to be a miserable wreck like he is. Because working on the outsides without trying to match it on the insides is something that just doesn't work. Here, there's a, you can view it in our rubber band. See the rubber band?
Mhm.
Here are insides, and here are outsides. What are our insides? In lesson 1, we spoke about our soul structure. What is our soul made up of? We have two souls, our animal soul and our godly soul. And both the animal soul and godly soul are made up of?
Thought, speech, action.
No, that's how they express themselves. But what are they made up of?
Well, you've got mental qualities, emotional
Yes.
qualities,
Yeah, you got intellectual qualities and emotional qualities of the soul.
modality.
The 10 modalities, faculties of the soul that mirror the divine sphirot. So you have your insides. And then, as we know, we're not tzaddikim, so not necessarily feeling or intellectually there to be in line with everything that the Torah expects of us, everything that we want to be. And then we have our outsides. So when we're starting off, there's a little bit of slack, and when there's slack, you're kind of comfortable. See, your outsides are over here, your insides over here. What happens when you start picking up your outsides? We learned last week, you can control your impulses, you could do more. Did that work? Did you do a little bit more and beyond what you were accustomed to?
Yes.
Yeah, but what did that feel like? Stretching that rubber band, right? You're picking up the outsides, and it's making a little bit of tension. And so, what happens when you stretch the outsides far away from the insides? You have one of two options. Either you could do what's called backsliding, which is
The outside gives.
the outside gives, and you're like, okay, it's untenable, I'm gonna drop it. Now, that was still your choice, and it was just, you couldn't white knuckle it that whole time, and so you chose to let go and give in. But if you're coming to this Tanya course, you know that that's not a good option, because we want to improve ourselves and pick up our behavior to achieve our goals and to achieve those things that we want to be. So the other option is just keep growing and growing and growing and growing until
The inside gives.
Until it snaps.
until you
Rubber band
snap and drop everything and just say, to heck with this. I can't be involved anymore.
no
I'll just
flexibility at all.
drop everything. Or sometimes you might stretch it out all the way and just, if you're not going to work on your insides, habit will maybe pick up the insides a little bit when you're used to doing things, but it's not going to be fast enough and it's not going to be thorough enough to catch up to what you want to be doing. So you'll be all stressed out and miserable because your outsides are way out here and your insides are back here. So the only option for us is to try to uplift our insides to get closer to and match our outsides. And Alter Rebbe has two paths that, in the introduction to Tanya, he calls them the quote-unquote long way and the short way to picking up our insides, our very nature, our soul structure, to match our outsides. What we're actively thinking about, what we're speaking about, and what we're doing. The Klutzkash is why, if the Alter Rebbe has a system for picking up the insides to match the outsides, we can elevate our soul to loftier planes, does the Alter Rebbe start with chapters 9 through 15 and then tell you, oh, now that you're feeling this tension, let me give you the short way, the long way, which is, by the way, 2 chapters, and the short way, which is 8 chapters. Because, well, the long way is very easy to describe, but takes a lifetime to, or takes a long time to really develop and work on. The short way is a very complicated and complex mystical idea that takes a very long time to explain, but once you get it, you can activate it immediately.
Good.
So one is called the long way, which we explain quickly, and then the short way, which is going to take a little bit longer to explain. So the question is, so if the Alter Rebbe has a way to pick up our insides, why does he first tell us about this general principle of impulse control, that we could do it even when we don't feel like it?
Is that like the first step to being able to go higher, or?
Yeah. Meaning, if you don't have any tension, then why are you coming to the Alter Rebbe for advice? It's like, you're coming into the Alter Rebbe for advice because you're feeling something that, and the Alter Rebbe gave you tools last week to pick up our outsides, and we could just do it, and there's really no excuse. And now that we have that tension, we have the motivation to actually work on the insides. Without that tension, there's no motivation. Because I can tell you, okay, you need to work on your insides. But if you're not feeling any stress, it's like, okay, I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm doing exactly what I feel. So until you're not just doing exactly what you feel, there is no chance of being able to work on the insides. Which is why we had a whole week break in between lesson number 2 and lesson number 3. Because the idea was, we're trying to exercise Mayach Shalat Alev, just raw impulse control. And some of us have successfully done that really well, and some of us less so. But either way, we realize that this is not going to work long term, even if we manage to keep it up all week. So we keep it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but how long can you white knuckle before something gives? Because you ever speak to somebody who's on a diet and they're like, I'm keeping with my diet, but it's driving me crazy, I'm miserable about it.
Yeah, everyone.
So it's the same thing with being a Beinoni, but to an even greater degree, because it covers all aspects of life. So something's got to give. You could just keep on doing it, but you're going to remain miserable doing it. And it doesn't mean that you can give it up and just forget about it, that you have an excuse. I lost control. No, that's a myth. But in order to ensure the sustainability of the program, there has to be some way for us to pick up the insides to match our outsides. So we can begin to feel like it, not just do it. So how do we go about making these tasks more palatable? Something that you're able to do. We all have things that we don't like to do. Some people it's filing taxes. For others, maybe flossing our teeth. Outside of Humboldt, sometimes people have a hard time recycling. Why is it so natural and so easy for people in Humboldt to recycle? To the point where they can't think of not recycling. They're very passionate about recycling. Why? Because they're thinking about the environment. And they're thinking about the global impact that it has. And when you think about it, you develop feelings for it. And then doing it is something that you're not just begrudgingly doing, it's something that you're very excited to do. You found a way to bring up your insides to match that commitment that you made. So, most people like to feel for what they're doing. It makes it easier to maintain a commitment. And it also makes it more meaningful. So how do we go about acquiring those emotions? There's the long way and the short way. The long way, so it takes 2 chapters to explain, and the short way takes 8 chapters. Because the long way is easy to explain, but it takes years of commitment to really get solid results from. And the short way is much more complicated to explain, but once you know what it is, you can use it right away. So I'll start with the long way, creating new feelings. Starting to page 46. We're going to do learning exercise number 1. Imagine that one day you get a call telling you that an aunt whom you haven't seen since you were very young is coming to stay for a week. It's hard to get excited about hosting somebody you know so little about. So you call your mother, who tells you that this aunt was her favorite sister growing up, and that your mother and your mother tells you all sorts of stories about this aunt, and what she meant to her, and how this aunt cared for her when you were young. Your mom even has some pictures of this aunt playing with you in the park, which she sends you. Now those warm childhood memories start to flood your memory. How does thinking about your aunt change your feelings about hosting her for a week? Can you think of other situations in which you developed feelings and enthusiasm for a daunting task through contemplation and thinking? Think about it for a moment. Was there ever a daunting task that you were faced with? Or something that you didn't want to tackle, but after thinking about it for a while, it became something that was more tenable? What?
For me, just a big one's drinking coffee. I drink a lot of coffee, so I'm trying to cut down on the coffee.
And that first that was difficult, but then you started thinking about what? You started reading medical papers about it, or?
I just noticed that you feel a lot better if you're just not drinking coffee. It's better for your health. And I just drink a lot of coffee, too much coffee.
Okay. For some people it might be very hard to just stop cold turkey.
How much coffee is too much coffee?
That's a whole different debate.
Yeah, kids, how much, really?
No, that's a different debate. Whether coffee is or is not bad for you.
Maybe.
But the long way can be summed up in one word. It's a Hebrew word. It's called hispainanus, which would roughly be translated as contemplation. Hispainanus means to contemplate about something, to think deeply about something, and by doing that you can develop feelings. The reason why contemplation works is because we feel deeply for things that we know about. When we take time to consider something deeply, it becomes more real to us. And we start to form opinions about it, and we start to care about it in one way or another. This is Jewish meditation, not to be confused with the Eastern meditations, which are about clearing your mind from any thoughts. This is what they would refer to in secular terminology as discoursive thought. Discoursive thought is not that term meditation as much as it's discoursive, trying to have a discourse within your own mind, a dialogue of different ideas. And when we engage in thinking and thinking deeply about certain things, you can develop a strong feeling for it. And so in this case, it's thinking about the greatness of Hashem. We want to do what? We want to pick up our actions to match the impulses of our godly soul, to do what Hashem wants from us. Not what we selfishly feel, but what we selflessly want. Our selfless will of our godly soul. That's what we want to be doing. How do we get our insides to match that outside action that we're doing? It's by contemplation. When we think about the greatness of Hashem, that builds our emotions. It makes us care about it a little bit more. So there's less of a tension than we previously had. We're picking up our insights through meditation, Jewish meditation, to match our actions on the outside. Now this is, as we said, the long way, because there are Hasidim who spend hours every morning before and during davening, the morning prayers, learning about the greatness of Hashem, which is, by the way, what all Hasidic thought and the discourses are talking about essentially is understanding the greatness of Hashem, and then meditating deeply about those concepts. And by doing so, slowly but surely, you pick up your insights to care more about, to have a feeling for what it is that you're doing. This is in the Alter Rebbe's words, text 1 on page 47. V'zeh klal gadol b'avodas Hashem l'beinani. This is the general principle in regards to how a Beinani serves Hashem. Limsho v'lishloit al hateva sheb'chol lasmoli. It's to govern and rule the animal nature. Kishemisboinen. When he does this, he's speinanus, is thinking deeply. B'moichei v'gadlus ein soif baruch hu. By intellectually contemplating the greatness of the infinite, that fills the heart with love. And then you start caring a little bit more about Hashem. If you learn more about Hashem, perhaps you'll care more about it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that's Jewish.
Now, does this mean that you're going to have a passionate desire and yearning to serve Hashem like a tzaddik? Not necessarily. Remember last week we said it's not within our control to perfect our insides. We can only perfect our outsides. But does that mean that we shouldn't work on our insides at all?
You gotta work on the inside.
No, you could change your insides even if you can't reach absolute perfection on the insides. The soul structure itself. You may still have your animalistic impulses and instincts of, I'm hungry, I want to eat. Not like a tzaddik who's like, I need to do a kindness to my body and give it some food so that way I can serve Hashem. And that's all it's thinking about. You know, it doesn't even have I, me, personal agenda.
Yeah.
Because there is no rift between the animal soul and the godly soul with the tzaddik. So we might not be able to reach the level of a tzaddik, but we could have some appreciation for Hashem. And having at least some appreciation is essential. It's very important. In text number 2, talks about the difference between a Beinani's appreciation for Hashem and a tzaddik's. Says, even if one's intellect and understanding are incapable of producing a revealed love, which means like a passionate, fiery love for Hashem in his heart, as long as he comprehends the greatness of the infinite, this is completely acceptable. For it is this appreciation that leads him to engage in Torah and mitzvahs. So we need to develop enough of an appreciation, recognition, and awareness of Hashem, which simulates having real emotions. It might not be this burning, passionate emotion, but it does have enough of a motivation to get you to care about it, to recognize that this is something that's important. You understand?
Yeah, that's interesting. Jewish meditation.
What's the difference between Jewish meditation and Eastern meditation?
Well, like you said, Eastern meditation, you're clearing the mind of thought.
They actually think a discursive thought is intrusive to meditation.
Yeah, like try to empty your mind, whereas Jewish meditation is
But to
contemplating
think about something in particular.
deeply, especially Hashem, to generate the feelings, to get you even more focused on Hashem, to generate that stronger feeling for Hashem. Which is way different.
Yeah. So,
And even in meditation, the Jews are thinking. That's what I love about it.
right, you always got to be thinking.
We're just always using our brains in a
There's
beautiful way.
no kunst to try to not think of a pink elephant. Remember when we did the exercise last week and we were thinking about the Torah and how it's a Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikin Bo, it's a tree of life to those who cleave to it. So that was a affirmative thought. That was a discursive meditation in a way, even though it was kind of a basic one. We weren't getting so deep and talking about all the different aspects of the greatness of Hashem. The type of meditation that we were doing was in the positive sense. We are thinking about something. Whereas if we were to try the experiment in the opposite, like don't think about a pink elephant, and every time you think of a pink elephant, make a line on the paper for 60 seconds, the same experiment, how many lines do you think you would have made on that paper?
Yeah.
Don't think of it. Whenever you think about it, just make a line and stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
It would be very hard.
A lot of pink elephants there. Yeah.
So, this type of love is something that is very easy and very near for every person who has a brain, for his mind is under his control, even if his heart is not. And he can meditate with it as he pleases on any subject. Thus, if he uses it to contemplate the greatness of the Almighty, he will inevitably generate, in his mind at least, a love of Hashem and cleave to him through the performance of his mitzvahs and the study of his Torah. So that, in a nutshell, is the long way. Why is that the long way?
It's harder.
It's
How long does it take?
a long time. I mean,
But does it work?
Yeah. It's just something you have to work on very hard to.
Yeah?
yeah, it definitely works.
I remember when I was growing up, we used to follow the Yankees, and we would follow all their stats, and we knew the players and the names, and who was shortstop and third base and right field and left field, and who was the pinch hitter, and who was, we knew all the different stats, and so therefore when the Yankees won, it felt like, this is great, we were happy. When the Yankees lost, we were upset, like, dang it, we really cared about it. What happened when I stopped thinking about the Yankees? I stopped caring. I stopped, because I was like a diehard